What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast with me, your host, Owen James, the channel that brings you all your UK takes on your Chicago Bears. Guys, we are talking Bears this morning. We're talking Ryan Poles, we're talking Braxton Jones, we're talking Darnell Wright and Ozzy Drapilo, and we're going to talk DeAndre Swift. And is it goodbye to DeAndre Swift? Is the lack of mentions kind of going to say bye-bye, Mr. Swift? See you later, buddy. The same way that they did in Detroit. We'll talk about that shortly. I think, DeAndre Swift will be eating his cornflakes this morning a little bit nervously, reflecting on what GM Ryan Poles said and perhaps also the fact that Ben Johnson is his head coach. Right, we're going to talk. Let's start off with the offensive line situation. Look, the Bears have done a fantastic amount of work this offseason on that offensive line. The offensive line was absolute garbage last season. It led to 68, yes, count them, 68 sacks on our rookie star quarterback, Caleb Williams. Yes, I know 19 of those sacks were then attributed to Caleb, either, holding on the ball, holding onto the ball too long, rolling into pressure, etc., etc. But the vast majority of those sacks were down to the offensive line. It seemed like a game of, I don't know, what's that game the kids playing where they all fall over? We all fall down, tissue, we all fall down. The offensive line spent a lot of the time on their arses last season, and wasn't great, was it? Was not great. But that seems to be very much have been rectified this season with obviously the acquisitions of Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dolman, added in obviously to the existing guys who were already there, like Darnell Wright. The right side of the line looks road grading. It looks shredding with Jonah Jackson and Darnell Wright there. I think there'll be a lot of runs going to the right side of that line. Those two will absolutely mash up the opposition. But now, a lot of people kind of talked, didn't they, in the draft of perhaps the Bears going out and getting a left tackle with one of those early picks, looking at someone, like, for example, a Calvin Banks Jr., who I personally didn't really rate him. Obviously, Will Campbell, if he'd fallen. Even someone like, for example, a Josh Connolly. But as it turned out, we saw what happened. We saw what happened with the picks. Didn't get any of those guys. Will Campbell didn't fall. Calvin Banks went the pick before the Bears. That was the situation, wasn't it? So, look, at the end of the day, there was no one there to get. I mean, I suppose you could argue that Vontae Irsay was there instead of that Hippo in the fourth round. I mean, I still genuinely don't get that linebacker pick. I think the guy's a practice squad guy at very, very best. But, look, let's talk. We're concentrating on the offensive line this morning. Braxton Jones, obviously, he's coming back from injury. He is recovering. He's developing, he's getting there, but he's still not fully there yet, is he? So that is a big issue. He will not go into training camp ready to practice, I don't think. So obviously that is a setback. Also, Braxton Jones didn't have the best of years last year. Now, obviously, we could see a major step up in Braxton Jones and Kieran Amagaji with the work, that Dan Rauscher, the new offensive line coach, does. Having a new offensive line coach, having a new head coach, it all could benefit the guys, both Kieran and obviously Braxton Jones. And we could see a real, improvement in their performances. We really genuinely could. But, by that same token, we could easily see them pretty much just bumping along as they have done long term. So there was talk, yesterday, Ryan Poles spoke about the situation on the offensive line. And he spoke very much about the fact that going to training camp and coming out of training camp, they want to kind of pick 5 guys and stick with those 5 guys. So, that's the right way to do it, to have a unit, to have a cohesive unit that understand each other's play, that understand the expectations, that obviously, will listen and will learn from the new offensive line coach, who is a top guy in Dan Rauscher. That is the way forward. And very much the debate is what happens at the left tackle. Now, if you'd asked me before the draft what you think would happen at the left tackle situation, and you go back to the comments made by Ryan Poles and the comments made by Ben Johnson, where they all spoke very highly of Braxton Jones, it seemed like very much the situation was that Braxton Jones would be given every possible opportunity to prove that he was the left tackle for the Bears. However, with the drafting of Ozzy Drapilo and comments made yesterday, it seems like there is an intention to give the rookie his opportunity at the left tackle spot. Ozzy Drapilo, obviously, he is a big old unit. I think he's 6'8". He is a big guy. He is a big guy. And now he's obviously, he was picked early on in that draft. And look, I think there is obviously concerns over him. He is, not an early pick. He was not a first rounder. He can play left tackle, right tackle. He spent the majority of his college career playing right tackle, though. That was the situation. He spent 2 out of his 3 years as a right tackle. In fact, he only really played left tackle in his first season and was not great, if I'm being honest. He was not a great left tackle, which does slightly concern me. He's 6'8", 316 pounds, so he is one seriously big-ass unit. Taken in the third, obviously drafted round 2, pick number 56. I think that was a little high. He was projected to go round 3. They've compared him to the likes of Tyler Goyton, Blake Fisher, Patrick Paul. Trapilo is someone I think the Bears are starting to see as being their left tackle of the future. His pass pro is very good. His massive frame does absolutely help with his pass pro. He does have obviously issues still. He is a rookie. He still is learning the game, and there's obviously that step up, isn't there, between college football and between NFL football. I think he's in terms of his development points, he struggles to play with a constant pad level due to his height. He's got some hesitation when working at the second level. He can get caught oversetting against speed rushers and creating vulnerability inside to counter moves that exploit his large his average lateral agility. He gets over aggressive at times in pass pro, leaving his chest exposed to defenders. With strong hand usage and technical rush plans, needs to improve the consistency of hand placement in the run game to maximise his natural power, more consistent movement to the point of attack. So, look, it seems to me that from what the comments that Ryan Poles made yesterday, that he is obviously going to look at, not him personally, I suppose, the coaches are going to look at moving Trapilo to left tackle. It seems very much that Darnell Wright will stay at right tackle. Now, there had been obviously a lot of discussions around moving Darnell Wright to left tackle and putting Trapilo in as a right tackle. It now seems that it's going to be, hopefully, I suppose, a 3-way competition between Trapilo, Jones and Amagaji to who gets that left tackle role. Obviously, a very vital role on anyone's offensive line. What Poles actually came out and said in this interview was, he said, whatever we settle on, especially when we're going into training camp, it's going to be really important to stick with that and be as consistent as possible. I think that is spot on. Like I said, it is absolutely spot on. It really is. He was also asked about the Joe Tooney contract, which he said is in the works and is ongoing. But interesting stuff nonetheless. And I think, realistically, we're looking at probably Trapilo getting his opportunity to play there. Like I said, I do have concerns about that. Like I said, when he was at Boston College, when he was playing as a left tackle, he was not great, and that is a concern. If you are not great at the college level, then you go into the NFL. You cannot have those weaknesses. You really can't. Now, personally, I wasn't a fan of this pick. I didn't think it was a good pick. I don't like Trapilo. I think he's too big and too slow. I think there were better options out there. But look, you got to go with Ryan Poles. You got to go with Ben Johnson. You got to trust the process, trust the guys to get this right, and hopefully Trapilo goes on to be a massive, massive success. But is this the end of Braxton Jones? Does this kind of say that the Bears will phase out Braxton Jones from now on, and once his contract comes to an end, it will be bye Braxton Jones, or maybe even looking at a trade at some point of the man himself. Now, the other thing that Ryan Poles talked about in this interview that he gave to the media was he spoke about the running back room. And more interesting than what he said was what he did not say. When he was questioned about the running back room, he spoke obviously about the fact that he's exceptionally excited that Eric Bieniemy will be working with the running backs. Obviously, Eric Bieniemy has vast experience in the NFL. Obviously, was part of the Kansas City Chiefs, was the OC there in the Super Bowl winning years. So he's confident, I think, that Bieniemy can have a really positive effect on our running backs, which is good. He spoke very highly of Roschon Johnson and the fact that he was going to be used differently this year. And he said how he was very, very disappointed in how Roschon Johnson had been used last season, and said that he was going to be used more as a physical back this year. Which I think will suit Roschon Johnson's game. But I think, looking at what else he said, he talked about Ian Wheeler. Obviously, he was coming back from injury. He spoke about Kyle Monongai. He did not, in any way, shape, or form, mention D'Andre Swift. he, like I said, he spoke about the running back room. He spoke about the excitement around the running back room. There was the admittance there that the Bears had tried to trade up to get Ashton Genty, but the price was way too high. That the Bears had tried to trade up to get Travion Henderson in the second, but again, the price was too high. So, I think there's a real kind of signal been sent there that whilst they're excited about the options that they've got in terms of Roshan Johnson, in terms of Ian Wheeler, in terms of Carl Monungai, maybe even Travis Homer, they are not excited with D'Andre Swift. Like I said, he was not mentioned at all in that interview. He was not mentioned as a positive of that running back room. He was not mentioned as being at the top back. Now, it may be just that, Ryan Poles didn't bother mentioning him because everyone presumed he's going to be the first choice. But it's like I said, a lot of the time when you talk, it's what you don't say rather than what you do say that carries that extra weight and that extra meaning. Now, you've got to remember that D'Andre Swift was got rid of from Detroit at the time that Ben Johnson was involved with the offensive staff. Johnson, if he had wanted to keep D'Andre Swift in Detroit, would have spoke up, and I'm sure he would have got what he wanted. However, he clearly didn't. So is there a breakdown there between the head coach and your RB1 in the fact that Ben Johnson doesn't see D'Andre Swift as his RB1, that he wants a better option, which obviously then starts to give legs to the Nick Chubb to Chicago rumours, which have obviously been going round. Obviously, along with the J.K. Dobbins rumours, the Breece Hall trade rumours, and obviously the Gus Edwards rumours as well, which have been doing the circulations. It does seem very much that the Bears are still shopping the running back room. They are still looking for running backs. They are still looking for someone to come in. But it does seem that there was kind of a complete lack of mentioning of D'Andre Swift, which does seem to kind of indicate that there is a belief within the Bears front office and within the Bears coaching staff that D'Andre Swift is not the man to take this franchise forward at the running back position. Interesting times. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. Is this the end for D'Andre Swift, or is it just an oversight by Poles? And what do you think of the offensive line? Can we realistically go into this new season with Ozzy Trapilo protecting Caleb's blind side, with Joe Tooney, with Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson and Darnell Wright as our starting O-line? I suppose the one positive will be if Trapilo is at left tackle, he's got Joe Tooney inside of him, who is an experienced NFL vet who can help to take him through and support him at all points. Guys, look, I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching the Bears Huddle podcast. Please like, comment, share and subscribe, and let's bear down. Catch you later, Chicago.